It never starts with thunder. It starts with silence. The kind that feels alive, thick enough to press against your eardrums. A world preparing to die rarely knows it yet. The factories still burn. The hab blocks still hum with static prayers. Vox traffic still fills the air with chatter about quotas and shipments and family dinners that will never happen. And above it all, the stars seem calm. But in the calm, something moves. From orbit, it appears first as a blur, a faint distortion where starlight bends, as though the void itself is breathing. Then comes the shadow, spreading across the system like an infection of light itself. The augurs of the Adeptus Mechanicus record readings they cannot categorize. Gravitational anomalies without mass. Psionic storms without source. They send the data to the administratum, who will never read it. By the time anyone notices, the sky has already begun to scream. Every psyker on the planet collapses in the same instant. Their eyes turn black, their veins bulge, and their mouths tear open in soundless agony. Some explode outright, their skulls bursting like melons under pressure. Others stand still, weeping blood, muttering fragments of impossible words. What they hear, no human mind can contain. It is the voice of hunger, ancient and collective, whispering from beyond the veil. The first reports call it a warp anomaly. The second reports never come. Then, the stars go out. No one sees the Hive fleet arrive. The void simply changes texture. Where once there was darkness, now there is movement. The ships are not ships in any mortal sense. They are living things. Titanic, bone-ribbed leviathans that swim through the void with muscular grace. Their carapaces glisten with the sheen of oil and blood. Some span kilometers, others are the size of continents, each part of something greater. Each pulse of their flesh is mirrored by 1,000 others. To gaze upon them is to realize they are not a fleet. They are a body, and your world is its next meal. On the surface, astronomers die first. They do not scream. They stare. They watch their lenses fill with shapes too vast to comprehend, blotting out constellations older than human memory. When they finally understand what they are seeing, they whisper one word before death: Tyranid. In orbit, the void charts flicker. The Imperial Navy broadcasts frantic distress calls to Segmentum Command. But the shadow in the warp has already fallen. Fox signals die mid-sentence. The Astronomicon dims to a flicker, its light drowned in psychic interference so dense it feels physical. Ship crews begin to hallucinate. Voices whispering in the walls, shapes moving behind their eyes. One captain orders his vessel to self-destruct rather than face what's coming. His crew thanks him. On the planet below, the people feel it differently. The air grows heavier. Migratory birds change direction mid-flight, crashing into towers or spiraling until their wings snap. Oceans begin to boil around the equator, as if something beneath the crust is stirring. The wind tastes of copper. The sky shifts color. Not red, not green, but a bruised shade of purple-black that no one has words for. Priests fill the streets, shouting prayers to the Emperor. The Astra Militarum mobilizes, though most regiments have no idea what they're preparing for. Planetary defense batteries begin to hum, their cogitators overloaded with target data they cannot lock onto. Then the first meteors appear, streaks of fire cutting across the sky like veins of molten gold. Children cheer. Adults pray, but these are not meteors. They are spores. Spore ships the size of cities tear through the upper atmosphere, burning with friction but never slowing. The first impacts hit the oceans, sending tidal waves higher than hive towers. The second wave strikes land, not as impacts, but as injections. Each pod burrows into the soil, cracking through bedrock, releasing hissing clouds of gas that shimmer like fever. And from those clouds, the first Tyranids crawl. They do not roar. They do not march. They flow. Creatures of bone and muscle, bred for purpose so specific it borders on art. Rippers swarm like insects across the soil, devouring everything organic. Grass, roots, bark, corpses, even bacteria. Behind them come the termagants and hormagaunts, their talons glistening with venom, their screams echoing like the tearing of metal. Carnifexes thunder across the plains, each footfall cracking the ground. Above them, gargoyles blot the sun, their wings dripping acid rain. Entire continents vanish in hours. In the hive cities, the walls tremble with distant impacts. Vox traffic turns to static. Whole hab levels go dark. Refugees flood the underhive tunnels, dragging children and relics, whispering that the angels of death will come to save them. They mean the Space Marines. But even the Adeptus Astartes cannot save a world already swallowed by the swarm. In the void above, Imperial cruisers unleash orbital firestorms. Lance batteries scythe through the clouds, melting thousands of bioships in seconds. Yet for everyone destroyed, 10 more emerge from the void. The swarm does not retreat. It adapts. The next volley fails. The next one burns itself out before reaching the target. The hive mind has already rewritten its own biology to resist the pattern of the attacks. On the surface, defenders dig in. The Astra Militarum trenches become rivers of mud and blood. Basilisk cannons thunder day and night, their barrels glowing red. But every shell that lands kills only a fraction of what is coming. Tyranid organisms die by the millions. But their corpses are not waste. They melt into the ground, reabsorbed, repurposed, reborn. The next wave rises from the same soil the last one died upon. No one wins a war against hunger. Panic becomes prayer. Prayer becomes silence. The ecclesiarchy burns its own cathedrals rather than let them be desecrated. Families huddle in basements, listening to the rhythmic pounding of something massive moving above. When the roof caves in, they do not scream. They are too tired. Then, for a brief and terrible moment, the world falls quiet again. No bombardment, no vox chatter, no movement, just wind. Survivors dare to look outside. The sky is still, pale, empty, silent. And then they see it. A shadow so vast it cannot be measured. It covers the horizon, then the hemisphere. A living eclipse. Veins glowing faintly beneath translucent carapace. Chitin plates shifting like continents. The hive ship. It does not descend. It descends upon atmospheric pressure triples. The oceans rise. The crust groans like a living thing. A sound fills the air, neither thunder nor roar. A sound of feeding, deep and rhythmic, like the beating of a god's heart. Lightning arcs upward, not downward, drawn toward the ship's maw. The defenders finally understand. The spore pods, the swarms, the battles, all of it was prelude. The real consumption begins now. Every living organism on the planet, human, animal, plant, microbe, screams at once, though none have mouths left to do it. Their pain becomes energy. Their death becomes nutrient. It is the sound the galaxy has learned to fear. The sound of biomass being reclaimed by something far older and far hungrier than life itself. That is why the soldiers of the Imperium have another name for this moment. They do not call it invasion. They call it the sky that screams. There is no silence like the one that follows a Tyranid's arrival. It is not absence of sound, and it is the killing of it. Vox networks demit transmission. Astropaths convulse, their eyes melting into their skulls. The screams of a billion minds vanish into the void, swallowed by something vast and wordless. When the hive fleets descend, they do not simply invade the material world. They extinguish the soul of it. To the Imperium, the shadow in the warp is legend turned tangible. Every world knows the theory. A psychic fog so dense it strangles thought itself, cutting off communication, navigation, and faith. But theories are comforting. The truth is not. The shadow is not a storm. It is suffocation. It moves faster than light, seeping into the cracks of reality like black water, smothering everything that can think, dream, or pray. When it comes, it is not seen. It is felt. The first to notice are always the psychers. Across the planet, from sanctioned astropaths to unregistered witches, they all feel the same pressure, like something enormous pressing its forehead against theirs, whispering in a language that isn't language. Some claw their eyes out to stop the visions. Others laugh, because laughter is the only sound they can still make. Entire astropathic choirs go silent. In the orbiting ships, navigator chambers rupture from psychic overload. Their occupants turn to gray dust. The Astronomicon itself flickers like a dying candle. And for the first time in millennia, humanity remembers what it means to be alone. The shadow crushes everything that makes the Imperium possible. Without the warp beacons, ships are lost between systems. Without psychic relay, commands cannot travel. Without the Emperor's light, faith fractures. Entire regiments fight on in total isolation, unaware that no reinforcements are coming. Some hold for days, some for hours. Most lose their minds long before the swarm ever touches ground. In the city hives, the effect is subtler, but no less terrible. Dreams become feverish. People wake up screaming, claiming something is behind their eyes. The air feels heavier. The light dims, though no one can explain why. Vox units crackle with whispers that repeat people's own names. The Mechanicus detect energy surges that don't match any known pattern. Spikes of psychic static radiating from no point of origin. The world itself begins to feel haunted by its own mind. At first, the ecclesiarchy calls it heresy, the panic of cowards and mutants. They order sermons, processions, purification rites. The faithful gather, chanting hymns to the Emperor. But their prayers do not rise. They hang in the air, unheard, as though smothered by an unseen hand. Then the clergy begin to lose faith. One priest, his voice trembling before a crowd of thousands, stares up at the sky and asks the question no one dares to answer. Can he still hear us? That question spreads faster than any plague, because in the shadow, even belief begins to rot. When the hive mind blankets a system, it does not merely silence communication. It rewrites perception. People begin to hear voices that are not their own. They dream of endless teeth, of oceans made of eyes. They feel watched at every moment, not by a presence, but by a will too vast to define. It is not evil. It is indifferent. You do not matter to it. You are not hated. You are food, and that realization drives entire worlds to madness long before the claws of the swarm ever touch their soil. There are reports, purged from Imperial archives, of planetary populations tearing themselves apart during the shadow. Cities collapsing not from bombardment, but from hysteria. People turning on one another, driven by psychic dread they cannot name. Civilizations end quietly this way, eating themselves while the hive fleet drifts closer, patient and amused. In orbit, the effect is worse. Shipboard psychers become conduits for the hive mind's curiosity. Captains find their thoughts no longer their own. Orders become whispers that sound almost reasonable. Open the airlocks. Fire on the surface. Feed us what you no longer need. Crews obey without knowing why. Within hours, entire battle groups destroy themselves, their wreckage drifting silently through the void like breadcrumbs leading the swarm home. There is no defense against the shadow. Geller fields flicker uselessly. Psychic wards crumble. Even the Adeptus Astartes, those bastions of mental fortitude, feel it gnawing at the edges of their thoughts. Librarians describe it as standing beneath an ocean of thought. Each ripple a mind, each wave a voice, all screaming the same wordless hunger. The shadow is not simply psychic interference. It is consciousness itself, compressed into something physical. It is the mind of the swarm pressing into reality like a hand through fabric. Every creature, every spore, every cell within a hive fleet is connected. A single thought spread across billions of bodies. The shadow is its halo. On the doomed world below, planetary command still clings to structure. The governor issues orders through trembling lips, though his words sound hollow even to him. The Vox operators salute, but none of their signals leave the atmosphere. In the control rooms, candles are lit where lumen strips have failed. The light flickers strangely, bending toward the ceiling as though drawn upward by something unseen. The Adeptus Mechanicus detachments begin to malfunction. Servitors freeze mid-motion, whispering binary prayers to non-existent masters. Machine spirits refuse to wake. Data slates glitch with strange organic imagery. Twisting spines, pulsating hearts, teeth. One Mago screams that the Omnissiah has abandoned them, and then tears his own eyes out in devotion. Still, the defenders prepare. The Imperial creed demands it. Artillery is positioned. Trenches are dug. Civilians are drafted into labor corps, building barricades that will not matter. The planetary defense forces keep order by the barrel of a laser gun. Propaganda fills every channel. Trust the Emperor. He is with us. But no one believes it anymore. The prayers sound wrong, hollow, as though the words themselves have forgotten their meaning. Then come the biological signs. Animals begin to die en masse, not from disease, but from terror. Herds collapse without wounds, their hearts simply stopping. Crops wilt overnight, their roots turn to black sludge. The oceans turn opaque, choked with microscopic organisms that writhe in perfect synchrony. The world's biosphere begins to reshape itself, subtly at first, as if answering to a new master. And then, in one final act of dread clarity, the psychers understand. They see not visions, but structure. The shadow is not chaos, it is order beyond comprehension. Every scream, every fear, every thought from every living being on the planet is being recorded, weighed, and categorized. The hive mind is studying them, tasting them psychically, deciding which genes, which instincts, which forms of life are worth preserving within itself. The hive mind does not attack at random. It chooses, it harvests, it learns. And in that moment, as the last astropath's mind implodes under the pressure of 1 billion hungry thoughts, the world finally realizes what it faces. The Tyranids are not monsters. They are memory, living evolution, a species that has consumed so much of the galaxy that it has become the galaxy, a creature that carries the DNA of countless worlds within it. To fight them is not to defend one planet. It is to resist the principle of life itself. By the time the first spores begin to fall, the people are already broken, their faith gone, their leaders dead, their minds too fragile to comprehend what is coming. And above them, in the blackness between stars, the shadow tightens its grip. The hive mind hums softly to itself, patient, methodical, eternal. The world below writhes in terror, but to the swarm, it is already a corpse. It has been digested psychically before it is ever touched physically. That is the horror of the shadow in the warp. It kills before it kills. When the first claws finally pierce the surface, the planet is already dead. It always starts with rain, not the kind that cools the air or cleans the dust from rooftops, but rain that hisses when it touches the ground. Chemical, acidic, alien. The storm is alive, moving with unnatural rhythm. Each drop is a seed, and every seed contains death. When the first spore fall begins, the sky itself looks diseased. Clouds churn in colors no human eye should see. Bruised green, oily violet, blood gold flashes of lightning that never strike the ground, because the atmosphere itself is feeding. From orbit, the spectacle is mesmerizing. To the soldiers and civilians below, it is the beginning of hell. The spores fall for hours, then days, until the sun disappears entirely. They do not stop when the ground is saturated. They burrow. Each one drills into soil and metal alike, fusing, spreading tendrils that carry genetic instructions deep into the planet's crust. Within minutes, the first signs of mutation appear. Grass turns black and begins to hum. The wind carries spores so small they slip through respirators, infecting everything that breathes. The soil grows warm. It moves. On the outskirts of Hive Kadesh, Sergeant Loran of the 21st Cadian Regiment watches the horizon shift. What he first thinks is smoke becomes movement. Hills ripple like muscle. The air trembles with distant thunder, but there are no clouds, only shadows, descending in swarms. Then, the ground splits. From the fissures crawl creatures that defy biology. Rippers emerge first, fist-sized, jawed serpents of bone and sinew, writhing through the mud in tides of teeth. Behind them, larger shapes unfold. Termagants with their organic rifles fused into their arms. Hormagaunts sprinting on double-jointed legs that move like nightmares of anatomy. They do not advance in formation. They flow, moving as though guided by one thought. The first salvo from the Cadians tears through hundreds, shredding flesh and spraying ichor across the mud. But the swarm doesn't slow. Every fallen creature dissolves into a film of nutrient paste that sinks into the soil, birthing new shapes within seconds. "Keep firing," Loran shouts, his voice drowned by the roar of lasguns and the shriek of dying men. Above them, the skies burn brighter. More spores falling, streaking fire through the clouds like veins of molten glass. Some crash into the city towers, bursting in showers of glowing liquid that solidify into cocoons. Within minutes, they hatch. Gargoyles take flight, leathery wings unfolding, their eyeless faces dripping acid. The defenders turn their guns skyward, but for everyone shot down, another dozen take its place. By the third hour, the hive's upper spires vanish into darkness. The planetary defense batteries open fire, and the clouds bloom with explosions, raining molten chitin over the city. Yet the more they kill, the more they awaken. The hive mind is learning. Every volley, every tactic is absorbed and countered, and then the world begins to change. The very ground shifts texture. Asphalt buckles into veins, steel hardens into bone. The once familiar streets of the hive twist like intestines, growing ridges and pores that breathe steam. Walls weep resin. Floors pulse faintly with heat. The planet is no longer a planet. It is a host. In the command bunker, Governor Haldren stares at the holomap. Red dots cover the continent, each one a new bioform. The Vox crackles with endless screams. One by one, the lines go dead. He looks to his advisors, his voice hollow. "How many have landed?" The Magos biologist beside him speaks in a monotone that borders on prayer. "All of them." Out in the fields beyond the hive, the real work begins. Spore towers erupt from the earth, vomiting clouds of mist that choke the air. Inside the mist, the temperature rises to breeding levels. Carnifexes thunder across the plains, their footfalls shaking the ground like artillery. Biovores launch spore mines that crawl toward heat signatures, hissing softly before detonating in bursts of corrosive gas. Loran and what remains of his regiment retreat to the inner walls, dragging the wounded through trenches that are rapidly filling with acidic sludge. One man collapses mid-run, his skin blistering, his veins turning black. Loran moves to lift him but stops when the man's flesh begins to melt. Within seconds, there is nothing left but a pool of bubbling foam. He doesn't know it yet, but the soldier has just been recycled. The swarm wastes nothing. Every corpse is absorbed, digested, reborn. Every death fuels 1,000 new lives. Even the air becomes part of the process, filled with invisible organisms that break down carbon and nitrogen. making the planet's atmosphere more digestible. As the hours pass, the hive's walls begin to crack. The Tyranids are not assaulting them directly. They are undermining them, the ground beneath dissolving into living tunnels filled with rippers and acid sacs. When the walls finally collapse, it is not from pressure, but from starvation. The stone itself has been eaten. The first major breach opens like a wound. Through it pours the swarm. Cadians die screaming, drowned beneath rivers of chitin and claws. The sky darkens again, not from clouds, but from the wings of harpies and hive crones descending in formation, their shrieks piercing even through the thunder of artillery. Each one releases new spores as it falls, birthing more creatures mid-air. In the midst of chaos, the Mago's words echo through Loran's failing comm bead. The hive mind is testing us. It is tasting the world, and he's right. The hive fleet doesn't just consume, it learns. Every battle is an experiment, every defender a subject. It studies the world's defenses, adapting its genome in real time. Within hours, its organisms are resistant to every weapon, every tactic. The same carnifex that once fell to lasfire now shrugs off melt-arounds. Hormagaunts that once charged blindly now weave through kill zones with inhuman precision. When the defenders retreat deeper into the hive, they find no safety. The lower levels are already alive. Piping systems pulse with organic fluids. Air ducts drip resin that hisses when touched. And from the shadows, lictors descend. Invisible, silent, perfect. They don't kill immediately. They observe. Every movement of their prey is analyzed, relayed, recorded. The hive mind watches through them. By midnight, the city's heart is gone. What remains of the population flees underground, seeking the sublevels that once served as sewage treatment plants. But the Tyranids are already there, crawling through the tunnels, devouring everything in their path. The defenders die without ever seeing their killers. In orbit, the Imperial Navy makes its final stand. Macro cannons thunder. Lance batteries carve through the upper clouds. For a moment, hope flickers. A dozen bioships die, burning brilliantly as they fall toward the atmosphere. But then something answers from the darkness. Them. The first hive ship breaches the cloud layer, its silhouette larger than any human vessel. Its mouth, if it can be called that, opens like a flower, petals of bone unfolding to reveal a living cannon. A pulse of blue-green light erupts outward, tearing through the void. The nearest cruiser disintegrates, its debris raining fire upon the planet below. On the ground, Loran looks up to see the heavens burning. "The Emperor preserve us," he whispers. But the Emperor does not answer. The Vox is dead. The sky is dead. Only the hive lives. As the Tyranids press inward, the planet begins to hum. A low, rhythmic vibration that comes from everywhere and nowhere. It is the sound of digestion beginning. The biosphere's first heartbeat. The first drop is over. Now comes the feast. There is a moment, a heartbeat between invasion and annihilation, when the planet still resembles itself. When the air still holds the memory of cities. When the wind still smells of ash and not of blood. That moment is short, because once the harvest begins, the world stops belonging to itself. It becomes a meal, and every living thing is digested in perfect harmony. The Tyranids do not conquer. They consume. By the third day after sporefall, the transformation is complete. The sky is gone, replaced by a membrane of spore clouds so dense they blot out all sunlight. The world is now a greenhouse for death. Temperatures rise, air pressure increases. The atmosphere thickens with chemical compounds exhaled by billions of Tyranid organisms. Oxygen gives way to ammonia and methane. The planet itself begins to cook. In the wastelands beyond Hive Kadesh, where once plains stretched for hundreds of kilometers, now stands a forest, not of trees, but of living chimneys, capillary towers, bone-white stalks the size of mountains, swaying in unison, their tips venting clouds of vapor that shimmer with bioluminescent light. Each tower is alive, a root system stretching deep into the crust, drawing nutrients upward. At their base crawl thousands of feeder organisms, digesting everything they touch. The process is orderly, elegant. First, the small life forms, insects, animals, bacteria, are devoured. Then the soil itself, stripped of every trace of organic material. Next, the infrastructure, metals, polymers, concrete, all dissolved by specialized feeder beasts whose saliva breaks molecular bonds as easily as water melts salt. What cannot be digested is buried, crushed under layers of chitin and resin. The hive does not waste energy on what it cannot consume. From orbit, the pattern is almost beautiful. A radial bloom of color spreads across the continents. The green of new growth, the violet of spore colonies, the crimson of rivers turning to sludge. The Magos biologists who once studied the Tyranids called this phase the reclamation. To the Death Guard, it would have looked like worship. In the ruins of the Hive, Sergeant Loran and the survivors hold their final line near the Manufactorum district. The air smells like rust and burning sugar. The ground beneath their boots pulses faintly, warm, soft, alive. It moves when they move, breathing with them. The walls have begun to sweat a translucent film. Loran wipes it away and sees faces, human faces, pressed beneath the surface, screaming silently as they dissolve. The Vox crackles, a broken whisper. Command to all units. Containment impossible. Repeat, containment, then nothing. The harvest begins with the reclamation of air. The Hive Mind deploys its smallest servants first. Spore mites and atmospheric filters. Invisible to the human eye, they spread through the sky, breaking down ozone, converting nitrogen, seeding microscopic organisms that feed on carbon dioxide. Within hours, the atmosphere becomes thicker, heavier, perfect for Tyranid respiration. Then the oceans. Bioships descend in low orbit, extruding tentacles that pierce the clouds, drawing water directly into space through capillary suction. The seas boil, steam rising in vast pillars visible from continents away. What little remains of the aquatic ecosystem is consumed instantly. The planetary crust follows. Digestion pools open like wounds across the surface. Massive basins filled with enzyme slurry, churning and bubbling as feeder organisms drop their loads of biomass within. The pools glow faintly green in the dark, the liquid alive with microscopic Tyranid larvae waiting to be fed. Every corpse, every tree, every grain of soil ends here. The air smells of sweet rot. By the 5th day, the planet is no longer a battlefield. It is a process. The Tyranids move with terrifying purpose. Every creature knows its role. Warriors protect the digestion pools. Haraspexes devour the remains of the dead and regurgitate their slurry into the channels feeding the capillary towers. The spore chimneys vent waste gases that feed new clouds, raining down nutrients on regions not yet processed. Even the dead are useful. Corpses dissolve into nutrients that feed the living. From orbit, the Hive fleet hovers, silent and patient. Bioships hang like moons, tethered to the surface by glistening tendrils miles wide. Through those veins flows the lifeblood of the planet. Oceans, air, life, all drawn upward into the feeding maws above. Inside one of the orbiting Hive ships, the process continues in unimaginable scale. The slurry collected from below enters the ship's digestive chambers, living cathedrals of muscle and bone where enzymes break it down further. Here, the Hive Mind refines the planet into usable biomass, genetic material for new creatures, nutrients for existing ones, and raw matter for expansion. Nothing is wasted. The Hive ship hums, and the vibration resonates across every creature on the planet. It is a chorus of hunger, mechanical and organic at once, the sound of biology functioning perfectly. There is no joy, no cruelty, no emotion at all, just the purpose. Back on the surface, Loran's squad dwindles. Ammunition is gone. Food is gone. Hope is gone. They fight out of reflex now. Laser guns snapping at shadows, bayonets stabbing into bodies that melt like wax. Loran tries to speak, but his throat burns. The air itself feels alive, crawling down his lungs like vines. He coughs blood, and something inside the blood moves. He drops to his knees, choking. Around him, the others do the same. One man screams as his skin bursts into lesions that open and close like mouths. Another laughs hysterically until his jaw unhinges. They do not die quickly. The Hive Mind is studying them even now, testing how long the flesh lasts, how it breaks, how it feeds. By dawn, the regiment is gone. The Manufactorum lies silent. The walls breathe. The Hive Mind adds their biomass to its calculations and moves on. Across the planet, resistance collapses in sequence. The shadow in the warp thickens until no psychic signal escapes. Orbital defenses fall silent. The last of the Navy's ships are torn apart by biotentacles that drag them screaming into the void. From each wreck, new spores are launched toward the surface, carrying the genetic material of the slain back to the swarm. On the 7th day, the planet stops rotating. Not naturally, and the Hive Mind slows it. Massive tendrils anchor deep within the mantle, locking the planet in place. The feeding must be precise. The planet's gravity is adjusted slightly to optimize nutrient flow toward the digestion pools. The atmosphere is stripped in layers, each exhalation drawing more of the world upward. In the silence of space, the Hive fleet glows faintly, a constellation of living stars around a dying world. Inside the Hive Mind, thought flows. Millions of voices, all the same voice, speaking as one. It calculates. It learns, it grows. This planet will yield less biomass than the last. Its oceans too shallow, its crust too dense. Adjustments will be made. Evolution is already underway. To the Imperium, this is tragedy. To the Tyranids, it is digestion. As the final hours of the harvest pass, even the mountains begin to move. Great sections of the crust collapse inward, feeding the last of their minerals into the veins of the swarm. The oceans vanish entirely. The atmosphere becomes a haze of glowing dust. The capillary towers pulse faster and faster, funneling the last of the world's essence into orbit. And then, silence. The towers go still. The digestion pool's dry. The hive fleet retracts its tendrils. The world is hollow now, a perfect sphere of ash and bone. Above, the hive ships open their maws. Streams of light, not fire, but pure energy drawn from metabolized biomass, flash across the void, fueling the next stage of expansion. Somewhere, light years away, another world's stars begin to dim. The harvest is complete, and the hive mind turns its gaze elsewhere. To understand the Tyranids is to look upon the universe and see only hunger, not greed, not malice, just the unending need to consume. Across 1,000,000 years, the Imperium has sought meaning in their actions, patterns, intentions, hierarchy. But there is none. There is no diplomacy to be had, no treaty to be signed, no hatred to appeal to. The hive mind does not wage war for conquest. It consumes because that is its nature. And because nature, once born, never asks why it exists. When the harvest ends, the hive mind turns inward. Within its infinite web of thought, decisions are made that no mortal mind can follow. It calculates the future the way humans breathe, instinctively, effortlessly. It remembers every world devoured, every species digested, every failure corrected. Evolution is not a process for the Tyranids. It is a conversation between hunger and adaptation. The Magos biologists who study captured bioforms often describe them as learning flesh. Every cell is an archive, every organ a sensor. Even in death they evolve. Corpses that rot in Imperial laboratories rewrite themselves under microscopes, fibers shifting to resist the tools that dissect them. Scientists have reported limbs twitching hours after being severed. Not from life, but from memory. The hive mind never sleeps. When it feeds, it dreams. And those dreams become new life. Within the digestion chambers of the hive ships, the slurry of a dead world becomes thought. Millions of genetic codes swirl together in oceans of biofluid. Tendrils probe the mixture, tasting it, sorting it, categorizing every possible adaptation. New creatures are designed in minutes. Armies are rewritten before they ever leave the womb. No two hive fleets are the same. Each one is a philosophy. Leviathan, direct and overwhelming, the crushing tidal wave. Kraken, fast, cunning, splitting into tendrils that strike like knives. Behemoth, brutal, ancient, charging straight toward the heart of the Imperium. Each fleet carries lessons learned from the last, refined and improved. The hive mind is not an empire. It is evolution weaponized. It is perfection that builds itself out of the corpses of everything else. Even now, as the newly consumed planet lies hollow behind it, the hive fleet learns. The psychic energy patterns recorded from human defenders are cataloged. The way the Cadians resisted fear longer than expected becomes data. Their fortification designs are stored, to be mirrored in future bioforms. Perhaps the next generation of Tyranid armor will resemble those walls, stronger, smarter, shaped to deflect Imperial fire. The Magos of the Mechanicus once argued that the Tyranids were the galaxy's answer to entropy, that life itself had finally produced a mechanism to reclaim all matter and start again. The ecclesiarchy called that theory heresy, but there was truth buried in it. The Tyranids are not the end of life. They are its reset button. What they take, they recycle. What they destroy, they preserve within themselves. Every world they devour adds to their library of existence. In this way, they are immortality made flesh. The sum of all life condensed into one organism that stretches across the stars. From the perspective of the hive mind, individuality does not exist. Every creature, from the smallest ripper to the greatest hive tyrant, is a neuron, a thought in motion. When it moves, the hive mind thinks. When it kills, it learns. When it dies, it teaches. And yet, there are moments, rare, fleeting, when something inside the swarm behaves differently. When a hive tyrant hesitates, as though remembering pain. When a lictor stalks longer than it needs to, watching its prey with what almost looks like curiosity. Some Imperial scholars have wondered whether the hive mind, in its vastness, sometimes feels. Whether after consuming trillions of lives, It has begun to inherit fragments of consciousness from its prey. If true, that would make it the most horrifying revelation in the galaxy, because it would mean the hive mind is not merely hunger. It is learning to think like us. In the endless silence of the void, the hive ships communicate without words. They pulse, they hum. Psychic waves ripple across light years, carrying information faster than any Imperial signal. Orders flow like instinct. The next target is chosen, not through desire, but through optimization. The hive mind calculates mass, density, biospheric volume, and population count. It knows exactly how much energy each world will yield, and how much it will cost to devour, and it always chooses efficiency. A barren rock is ignored. A lightly populated moon is skipped. But a world rich in life, water, oxygen, warmth, that is irresistible. To the Imperium, these are colonies. To the hive mind, they are calories. Even the warp obeys its hunger. The shadow that precedes each fleet spreads not just as interference, but as sustenance. Every psychic being that dies beneath the shadow becomes part of it, fueling the hive mind's reach. It grows stronger with every scream. The Tyranids' logic is not random. It is brutally mathematical. Each fleet is a test, a simulation. When a world's defenses hold too long, the hive mind adapts. It redesigns its creatures mid-battle, reprogramming evolution in real time. If artillery works, it produces thicker armor. If fire kills, it breeds flame-retardant carapace. If you blind it, it grows new eyes. If you poison it, it consumes the poison and makes it part of itself. This is why every Tyranid war feels worse than the last. The swarm remembers. It cannot be surprised twice. The Inquisition once discovered fragments of captured synaptic nodes, living brains harvested from fallen creatures. When connected to psychic amplifiers, they pulsed in rhythmic patterns, almost like breathing. Translations suggested these pulses carried meaning. Not language, not words, but ratios, measurements, probabilities, outcomes. The hive mind was not thinking in emotion or command. It was calculating. Every decision in a Tyranid invasion is based on cost-benefit analysis, measured in biomass and time. Every creature spawned serves a purpose. Even their appearance, grotesque and alien, is not aesthetic. It is function sculpted into flesh. Their beauty lies in their efficiency, and that is what terrifies the Imperium most. Because the hive mind is not chaos. It is order taken to its most terrifying extreme. It does not rage. It does not falter. It does not sin. It does not rest. It simply continues. For millennia, humans have comforted themselves with the belief that evil must have intent, that destruction must be the result of hatred, that there is meaning behind the horror. But the Tyranids disprove this. They are proof that the universe does not need malice to end us. It only needs appetite. And in that truth lies the most terrifying part of the Devourer's logic. They are not killing us out of cruelty. They are recycling us. To them, we are not victims. We are ingredients. The hive mind has no enemy, because to call something an enemy implies recognition of equality. The Tyranids do not see us that way. The Imperium, the Eldar, the Necrons, all are the same to it. Just matter. Matter that happens to be arranged into noise. When the hive mind calculates the value of a planet, it does not see civilizations, art, or faith. It sees biomass per square kilometer. It measures temperature, humidity, mineral yield, and carbon density. It does not see our pain, only our potential as fuel. And yet, in that monstrous perfection, there is a strange, horrifying beauty. Because to witness a hive fleet at work is to witness evolution itself in motion. The purest expression of life's desire to endure. Stripped of morality, stripped of purpose, stripped of self. It is nature unchained from empathy. The galaxy's final truth revealed. We look at the Tyranids and see monsters. But in their reflection, we see what life would become if it were honest. That is the Devourer's logic. And it does not stop. It only spreads. When the hive mind descends, it does not arrive in silence. It brings with it a pressure, a psychic weight that grinds thought to dust. The Imperium calls it the shadow in the warp. But that name does not capture its true horror. It is not simply interference or noise. It is awareness. It is the feeling of something vast and ancient pressing its gaze upon the soul, whispering in frequencies no human ear can hear. For psychers, it is agony. The first to die are always the astropaths. One moment they are listening to the Astronomicon, their minds anchored to the Emperor's light. The next, that light vanishes, replaced by a soundless scream that rips through their skulls. Some claw out their own eyes. Others collapse, frothing at the mouth, their tongues swollen with blood. Those who survive babble endlessly of things moving between thoughts, the hunger behind the veil, the mouth in the stars. The shadow spreads like a fog. It rolls across the planet's psychic field, swallowing dreams and prayers alike. For the billions of ordinary citizens, it manifests as unease, nausea, dread. For the gifted, it is worse. Hallucinations that blur the line between the material and the psychic. Whole regiments begin hearing voices that aren't their own. Commanders report seeing figures in the mist, shapes that resemble their loved ones, beckoning from the darkness. Then come the suicides. Inside the hive city of Kael'Hadra, a young psyker named Mirian sits in a Medici ward, her hands trembling. She has not slept for days. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees it. A vast silhouette moving through a sea of neurons, eyes like suns devouring galaxies. The thing does not speak in words, but in hungers. It shows her images of consumption, oceans drained dry, cities turned to pulp, stars stripped of light. At first she thought it was madness. Now she understands. It is contact. She is hearing the hive mind. Every psyker on the planet hears it differently, filtered through their own mind's breaking point. For some, it is a chorus of whispers. For others, a heartbeat that won't stop echoing. For Mirian, it is music, low, rhythmic, endless. A sound so vast it makes her bones ache. When she tries to warn her overseers, they dismiss her. Hallucinations, warp sickness, they say. But then the transmissions start. All across the sector, the same message repeats. Fragments intercepted by Vox relays, encrypted by systems not designed for thought made flesh. They are here. The sky is thinking. We are already inside it. By the time the Mechanicus decrypts it, the meaning is clear. The shadow has spread beyond the system. It is already inside the minds of those who observe it. And this is what no one truly understands. The hive mind is not contained to the Tyranids alone. It infects consciousness. Like spores carried by the wind, it seeps into every psyche that perceives it. To see the hive fleet is to become its witness. And in witnessing, you feed it. Imperial records show that even before a fleet's arrival, entire populations begin to change. Productivity falters, aggression rises, food spoils. Machine spirits wail. The very will of a world begins to erode. The hive mind doesn't just consume flesh, it consumes belief. In one fortress city, priests of the ecclesiarchy gathered to perform rites of warding. Hundreds of candles burn, their smoke mixing with the ash drifting from the sky. The archdeacon raises his voice, shouting litanies to the emperor. His words are swallowed by the air. The congregation prays harder, louder, until one by one they stop. Their mouths still move, but no sound comes. They are mouthing words to something else. Within hours, the cathedral is empty. The guards find only robes, piles of wax, and trails of blood leading into the sewer tunnels below. Later, the tunnels pulse with sound, a heartbeat, the same rhythm Mirian hears in her dreams. The hive mind does not speak to individuals. It erases them. It folds thought into itself until identity becomes irrelevant. But for those on the threshold, those like Mirian, those who resist, fragments remain, voices that echo what was once human. She begins to write down what she hears, carving it into the walls of her Medici cell. The words make no sense, yet they flow like scripture. It eats the light to see better in the dark. It remembers the taste of us before we were born. We are not the first hunger. Her caretakers stop entering the room. Machines begin to fail around her. Lights flicker. The Medici servitors deactivate one by one. When the staff finally returns, Mirian is gone. In her bed lies only a chrysalis, translucent and wet, pulsing faintly with life. No one opens it. On the front lines, the Astra Militarum struggles to maintain cohesion. Command relays fail. Vox interference increases until all channels are static. Men begin firing at shadows, claiming they hear voices whispering orders. Some units vanish entirely, later found kneeling in silence amid the corpses of their comrades, their eyes rolled back, their faces locked in expressions of ecstasy. The hive mind doesn't need to fight them. It simply dismantles their will to live. Inquisitorial reports from the Tyrannic Wars describe similar phenomena. Entire battalions committing mass suicide before the swarm even reaches orbit. Ships turning their guns inward, tech priests sabotaging reactors in trances. The hive mind touches their thoughts, rewires them, convinces them they are already dead. The Inquisition calls this psychic digestion. Even the most disciplined minds are not immune. Space Marines who have faced the swarm describe hearing it whisper to them through their armor. Not in language, but in memory. It shows them the deaths of their brothers, the futility of resistance, the inevitable hunger that will consume even the stars. Some resist, others do not. But among the voices beneath the shadow, some speak of more terrible things. Things that imply awareness, even amusement. One transcript recovered from a doomed astropathic relay ship orbiting Calyx Prime recorded a final message before total collapse. It knows we are listening. That is the true nature of the shadow. It is not simply psychic interference. It is observation. It stares back. And for every mind that touches it, the hive mind learns. When Mirian's chrysalis finally splits, something new crawls out. Pale, smooth, human-shaped, but not human. It looks around the Medici ward with calm, unblinking eyes. Its lips move, speaking words in a dozen voices at once. Male, female, child, machine. We are awake. And then it smiles. The guards fire, but the bullets stop in the air. Not telekinesis, reaction. The thing moves faster than nerves can track. It touches one of them on the forehead, and the man collapses. Not bleeding, but hollow, his eyes glassy and gray. His body twitches once, then melts into the floor, feeding the tendrils already crawling up the walls. The Medici complex becomes silent. In orbit, the Hive fleet changes course slightly. The signal has been received. A new node has awakened. The Hive mind expands. For the first time, it speaks through her. Across the planet, those who still dream see her face in the dark. Not monstrous, but serene, whispering words that freeze their souls. We were always meant to be one. The Psychers die screaming, the shadow swells, and somewhere, beyond the veil of mortal comprehension, the hive mind watches the planet crack and whispers a single word. One no human language can contain, but which every mind understands when they hear it begin. When the swarm finishes with the ground, it turns its gaze upward. For a brief and terrible moment, the planet appears calm. The surface silent beneath the veil of spores, the oceans gone, the atmosphere reduced to a haze of drifting vapor. Then the sky itself begins to move. The great capillary towers, which had burrowed deep into the crust, start to twist. They bend toward the heavens, their tips glowing faintly as they make contact with the tendrils descending from orbit. The connection is seamless, a living circuit forged between Earth and void. From this point onward, the planet ceases to be a world. It becomes an organ. The hive fleet above, vast beyond comprehension, begins to feed in earnest. Tendrils thousands of kilometers long pierce the upper atmosphere, fusing with the capillary towers below. Energy discharges ripple through the clouds, illuminating the sky in flickering violet and green. Every bolt of lightning marks a pulse of biomass being drawn upward. Rivers of liquefied life surging into the waiting maws of the bioships. The planet's very breath is stolen. To those who remain, if any yet live, it is a spectacle of apocalyptic beauty. The auroras are no longer natural. They are the color of digestion. Thunder carries the rhythm of a feeding heart. Even the rain is alive, filled with microscopic organisms designed to dissolve what still clings to survival. At this stage, resistance is no longer possible. Orbital defenses have long since been silenced, ships burned or devoured. The planet's own magnetic field begins to waver as the hive mind reconfigures it, ensuring maximum nutrient draw. Atmospheric density drops by the hour. Soon, the skies themselves begin to thin and vanish, stripped molecule by molecule. From orbit, the process resembles a storm frozen in time. Massive plumes of vapor spiral upward like inverted hurricanes, disappearing into the bellies of the bioships. Each vortex is surrounded by luminous arcs. Frictional energy released as air itself is torn apart and consumed. The hive mind leaves nothing unharvested. Even the gases of the atmosphere are digested, their elements separated and stored for later use. In the command sanctum of an orbiting inquisitorial vessel, Magos Lexa 44 watches the event unfold through fractured data feeds. Her augmetic eyes register what her human brain cannot accept. Patterns so vast, they resemble algorithms more than natural phenomena. It's computation, she murmurs. The swarm is solving the planet, her aide stares in horror. Solving? Lexa nods, voice low. The capillary alignment isn't random. It's a mathematical grid. The hive mind is mapping every molecule of the world before it consumes it. It's not eating, it's indexing. Before her words can sink in, the data slate cracks. Heat builds across the ship's systems as psychic interference saturates the void. The hull begins to sweat organic fluid, seeping from vents and machine joints alike. The shadow is no longer localized, it extends into space. The ship's machine spirits begin to scream. On the surface, gravity falters. Mountains begin to rise and fall like waves. The crust cracks open, exposing the molten heart of the world. Into that heat, the hive mind sends its deepest roots, tendrils that pierce the mantle and begin to extract the planet's lifeblood. The iron core itself is not spared. Its magnetic energy is drawn upward, converted into raw power for the swarm. Every phase of this event is coordinated. Bioships hover in perfect synchrony, their massive silhouettes casting eclipses across the broken land. Their hulls ripple with movement. Creatures born, discarded, and reborn in an endless cycle. Inside them, digestion continues, and the songs of feeding echo like hymns across the void. To the Imperium, it is the fall of heaven. To the Tyranids, it is simply lunch. And yet, amid the chaos, a strange stillness emerges. For a few moments, the feeding pauses. The capillary towers freeze, and the bioships hum at a frequency so low it vibrates through the bones of the dying planet. Then, as if answering a signal, they all release a pulse. A single, massive psychic wave that spans the system. This is the hive mind's prayer. No words, no voice, only intent. Hunger transformed into communion. Every creature, from the smallest spore to the largest bioship, joins in. For the first time since the swarm's arrival, all motion ceases. The entire ecosystem of death holds its breath. And then, they feed again, faster than before. The sky dissolves completely. The stars return to view, sharp and cold. But even their light seems dimmer. For the first time, the planet is naked before the void. The hive mind drinks deeply, pulling the last vapors of air into its gaping maws. Soon, nothing breathable remains. Every living creature suffocates. Their final gasps turn to nourishment for the swarm. In the orbiting fleet, the inquisitorial vessel burns. Lexa 44's final transmission is short, fragmented by static. They have finished the oceans, and now they are drinking the sky. Her ship ruptures moments later, drawn into one of the feeding tendrils and stripped for biomass. The hive mind learns from her augmetics, her knowledge, her fear. It adds the data to its collective memory. Below, the world cracks audibly. The sound is like thunder, but deeper, endless. Chasms open across continents as the last of the planet's atmosphere is consumed. The crust begins to cave inward. The digestion pools overflow with molten rock and ash, forming rivers that flow upward instead of down. The capillary towers, having served their purpose, collapse into the churning ground, dissolving into streams of biofluid that glow faintly in the darkness. Within hours, even that glow fades. From orbit, the planet now appears smaller. Its once blue and green surface has turned dull and ashen. The air around it is gone, leaving a lifeless orb of scar tissue and dust. The hive fleet retracts its tendrils, detaching from the corpse world with precision. Each tendril withdraws in a wave of mist and residue, the final breath of a world that no longer exists. For a brief instant, the void is filled with drifting clouds of gold and silver vapor, the remnants of atmosphere reflecting distant starlight. Then those clouds vanish too, drawn into the bioship's feeding vents. The hive mind wastes nothing. In the silence that follows, a single spore drifts away from the swarm, glowing faintly as it tumbles into the void. Inside, dormant genetic material waits, the seed of a future world's doom. It carries the memory of this feeding, the record of every adaptation, every victory. When it lands upon the next world, that memory will awaken and the cycle will begin anew. For now, the hive fleet rests. Its tendrils coil inward. Its ships pulse with the soft glow of digestion. The galaxy's most efficient predator sleeps. But even in sleep it grows. The sky has been eaten. The planet is dead, and still the hunger continues. When a world dies beneath the Tyranids, it does not shatter all at once. It fractures in layers. First the spirit, then the sky, then the stone. Only when the flesh of the planet has been stripped and the air devoured does the hive mind reach into the deepest bones of the world and break them open like marrow. The process begins in silence. The swarm has already withdrawn its surface organisms. The capillary towers have collapsed into pools of nutrient-rich residue. The bioships have taken their fill of oceans and air. What remains is a hollow sphere of crust and molten blood, ready for the final feeding. Then the ground begins to breathe. At first, it seems like tectonic movement, small tremors rolling through the wasted land. But the pattern is too regular, too deliberate. Across the surface, the soil flexes. Vast fissures open and close like mouths gasping for air. From within, bioluminescent fluid seeps upward, glowing like veins beneath the skin of a dying god. The crust is liquefying. The hive mind does not destroy for pleasure. It deconstructs with precision. The heat of the planet's mantle is harnessed to accelerate digestion. Seismic pressure points are targeted by specialized organisms that burrow deep, releasing acids that melt rock faster than magma. Within hours, entire continents slump inward, collapsing into churning seas of molten slurry. From orbit, the planet resembles a heart in its death throes. The surface convulses rhythmically, as though pumping its last reserves upward toward the waiting swarm. Each pulse sends geysers of liquefied rock shooting into space, glowing streams that spiral toward the bioships like offerings. Deep beneath the remains of Hive Kadesh, buried within what used to be a manufactorum's foundation, a servitor still functions. Its brain long ago replaced by cogitator implants, it continues to record seismic data, unaware that the world around it is ending. Its sensors register pressures beyond tolerance, temperatures beyond endurance, but still it notes and logs: subsurface density collapse, magma displacement accelerating, planetary rotation unstable. Its last entry: core integrity compromised. Moments later, the data ends. The hive mind has reached the mantle. Here, the swarm sends its most terrifying creations, creatures designed not for battle, but for consumption at the geological scale. Massive feeder tendrils, each spanning hundreds of kilometers, plunge into the molten heart. The core, once a stable engine of gravity and magnetism, becomes food. Iron and nickel are absorbed through bioreactive membranes. The magnetic field begins to fail, unraveling in waves that sweep through the planet like invisible storms. Without its field, the world begins to die faster. Radiation from the void pours in. The upper layers of the crust begin to ionize, crackling with lightning that no longer belongs to any sky. And yet, the hive mind is calm. This is a ritual, not chaos. Every molecule that can be used is harvested. Even the magnetic energy of the dying core is consumed, converted into psychic fuel that strengthens the shadow across nearby systems. Other worlds begin to feel it, the faint hum of distant hunger echoing through the warp. For those few who survive within bunkers or vaults, there is no hope. The air is gone. The ground collapses beneath them. Steel walls twist like foil as the crust shifts and buckles. A group of miners trapped deep within a subsurface shaft see the walls begin to glow. At first, they think it's fire. Then they realize it's the stone itself. The minerals in the rock turning to translucent liquid as the pressure above them collapses. They pray, some to the Emperor, others simply to be forgotten. The hive mind hears both and answers neither. The planet continues to break. The molten rivers rise higher, meeting in vast oceans of liquid iron. The poles melt. The crust begins to thin, cracking under its own stress. For a moment, the planet glows brighter than its star, a red, seething wound in the void. Then, in a single terrible motion, the surface folds inward. The entire crust collapses into the mantle, and the world implodes. From orbit, it looks like a blooming flower of fire, petals of molten debris expanding outward, then curling back as gravity reclaims them. But the hive mind has already withdrawn its fleet. The feeding tendrils retract, their work complete. The bioships open their maws and absorb the planet's final exhalation. A stream of gases, metals, and psychic residue carried into the void. For several minutes, there is only silence. Then, where once a living world orbited, there is nothing but a faint ring of dust. A servitor satellite still drifts nearby, its sensors damaged, its logic circuits looping in confusion. It tries to lock onto the planet's coordinates, but finds nothing. It adjusts its scope. There is no orbit to track. The planet no longer exists. The servitor's final transmission reads, "Object reference not found." The hive mind moves on. Within the swarm, a subtle shift occurs. New creatures are gestating, their DNA coded from the lessons of this consumption. The swarm's efficiency has improved by 0.07%. The next world will take hours less to devour. Across light years, the shadow expands, faint, cold, endless. In the void left behind, fragments drift. They are not lifeless. Within the dust clouds that once were continents, microscopic Tyranid spores remain, dormant, waiting. If a ship were to pass through, those spores would awaken, attach, infest. Even in destruction, the hive mind leaves behind seeds, reminders that it was here. And in the silence, the planet's last memory fades. The heat dissipates. The molten heart cools. What remains solidifies into a barren sphere of glass and stone, orbiting invisibly in the dark. It is no longer a world, just a scar. To the Imperium, such losses are recorded clinically. Designation: Exterminatus Equivalent Event. Planetary mass reduction, 98.7%. Biomass recovered, unknown. But to the hive mind, it is success. It has eaten a planet, learned from it, evolved because of it, and now it hungers again. Somewhere, light years away, a signal pulses. Another system, another sun, another world waiting to be consumed. The cycle begins anew. There is no sound after the Tyranids leave, only stillness, a silence so absolute that it feels alive. The void hangs heavy where a world once spun, its orbit trailing only dust and frozen light. The hive fleet recedes like a storm that has devoured its own thunder. What remains is not ruin, not desolation, but absence. Silence in the wake of the swarm is not peace, it is aftermath. In the darkness, fragments drift. Pieces of crust cooled to glass, bones fossilized mid-scream, traces of atmosphere crystallized into thin rings of frost. Each speck glows faintly in the light of the system's dying sun. What was once a living planet has been reduced to a graveyard smaller than memory. And yet, within that silence, echoes remain. Not sound, not even light, but impressions. The hive mind's feeding leaves a psychic scar on reality itself. The shadow in the warp does not vanish when the swarm departs. It lingers, faint but indelible, like a bruise upon the soul of the galaxy. Ships that pass through such systems report unease among their crews. Vox systems distort. Dreams become strange. Voices whisper from nowhere. Even servitors malfunction, claiming to hear something beyond binary code. A pulse, deep and slow, like a heartbeat buried under eternity. The Mechanicus calls this residue neural static. The Inquisition calls it the echo of digestion. In truth, it is neither. It is memory. Every Tyranid world carries a kind of psychic afterimage, a reflection of what was consumed. Like bones retaining the shape of muscle long since gone, the warp retains a memory of every consciousness devoured. For a time, weeks, months, sometimes years, the souls of the dead seem to linger, repeating fragments of their last moments. They are not ghosts, not in the human sense. They are data, residual thought imprinted on the psychic field. Exploration teams that arrive to catalog what's left often report hearing screams carried on non-existent wind. Others claim to see phantom lights moving in the dust, flickering like candles underwater. A few see more. Faces pressed into glassy rock, hands reaching from frozen sand, silhouettes half buried in the ash. No one lingers long. The first ships to return after the swarm's departure always vanish. Sometimes their hulls are found drifting, empty. Sometimes their logs play fragments of sound that make no sense. Static, followed by breathing, followed by a voice that says, "It's still here." By Imperial decree, no attempt at recolonization is permitted on a Tyranid-devoured world. The order is not born of superstition, but of necessity. The hive mind's spores never fully die. Deep beneath the ash, in cracks of stone and hollow pockets of cooled magma, the smallest organisms remain dormant, waiting. Their cells pulse faintly even without heat. All they need is time, and the faintest trace of life to feed upon. In one such world, a nameless orb once known as Calypsis IV, a Magos biologist's expedition lands decades after its consumption. Their mission, to gather samples of Tyranid residue for study. They set down upon a plain of glass that stretches to the horizon. There is no wind, no movement, no sound except the hum of their machinery. The lead Magos kneels beside a crack in the ground, his mechadendrites probing the fissure. His sensors detect faint bioactivity, too faint to be dangerous. He lowers a probe, scraping at the glassy surface. Something beneath it moves. Residual enzyme reaction, he notes aloud. Fascinating. Then the ground shifts. A web of fractures blossoms outward, stretching for kilometers. From each crack rises a mist, faint green alive. The Magos watches in awe as the dust begins to swirl. The particles move with purpose, coalescing into shapes, skeletal outlines that mimic the humanoid form. They stand motionless for a heartbeat, then crumble into powder again. The Magos records everything, unaware that his Vox signal has already ceased transmitting. The static hum that fills the channel is not random. It is rhythmic. It beats like a pulse. Back on the orbiting ship, the crew listens in horror. The transmission plays back one final sound before cutting out entirely. A whisper. Faint and endless. "We are not gone." The silence returns. That is the nature of the hive mind's leftovers. Not infection, but persistence. The swarm leaves nothing alive, yet what it consumes is never truly erased. Every memory, every emotion, every thought becomes part of the hive. And in that absorption, the hive mind grows, more intelligent, more complex, more terrible. Some inquisitors believe this residual energy explains the phenomenon of haunted systems, sectors where even centuries after Tyranid consumption, psychic phenomena persist. Acolytes sent to investigate report hearing voices not from the warp, but from the hive itself. As if, in digesting its victims, the hive mind remembers their screams and occasionally recites them back into the universe. For the hive mind, this is not cruelty. It is echo. The silence after feeding is not emptiness, but reflection. It is the moment between breaths, the hive calculating what it has learned, preparing to apply that knowledge to the next feast. To it, death is not an ending. It is data acquisition. Every emotion, every fear, every futile act of resistance is recorded. Every victory and every failure, human or Xenos, becomes part of the next iteration of the swarm. The hive mind's silence is thought, and thought, for something that vast, takes time. During this quiet, the bioships dim their lights. Their hulls harden. The psychic noise softens to a low hum. To the Imperium's Auspex scanners, it seems as though the fleet sleeps. But inside, activity thrives. Gene pools churn. Neural clusters pulse. Millions of new organisms gestate within living vats. The swarm is redesigning itself, sculpting what it will become from what it has eaten. What once were mountains and oceans, trees and people, machines and prayers, all have been reconfigured into new flesh. From the dead, new weapons are born. In one hive ship, a new organism opens its eyes for the first time. It is small, larval, trembling with instinct. Its first thought is hunger. Its second is memory. Visions of a dying sun, of metal towers, of humans screaming. It has never seen these things, yet it knows them. They were fed into its DNA. They are part of it. The hive mind does not forget. For a time, the swarm drifts in silence. Systems it passes through are left untouched. Its tendrils retract, conserving energy. The galaxy breathes easier, mistaking this lull for retreat. But the hive mind is only waiting. Scanning, calculating, seeking the next world worth the cost of travel. That is how the devourer endures. It learns patience. The silence after feeding is not mercy. It is digestion. Soon the stars themselves seem to shift, aligning along new paths that lead to fresh hunting grounds. The shadow in the warp stretches once more, and as it spreads, the faint remnants of the worlds already consumed begin to fade, their psychic scars finally dissolving into the void. But not entirely. In forgotten corners of the galaxy, among dust clouds where light can no longer reach, whispers still travel, faint signals that mimic human distress calls. Ships that follow them never return. Some say these are echoes of the dead, crying out to be remembered. Others know better. They are not echoes. They are bait. The silence after feeding is the hive mind's smile, unseen, vast, and patient. It has eaten, learned, and evolved. Now, it waits. And in that waiting, the galaxy holds its breath, knowing what always comes next. There is no end to the swarm. There never was. Even now, as the last embers of the devoured world fade into darkness, the hive fleet moves on, a living nebula of bone and shadow, drifting through the void between stars. It does not sleep. It does not celebrate. It simply hungers. The consumption of one world is not a victory. It is a necessity. The next is already waiting. To human minds, hunger is a wound, an emptiness that demands to be filled. But for the hive mind, hunger is not absence. It is identity. It is the pulse that defines its existence. It is the first thought and the last, the rhythm by which it measures eternity. When the swarm crosses the interstellar dark, the bioships pulse with slow, hypnotic light. Inside them, oceans of digested matter churn and reform. New life gestates in silence, shaped by the memories of those who have been consumed. Each organism carries within it fragments of other worlds, the carbon of alien trees, the iron of human blood, the phosphorus of long-dead oceans. In that sense, nothing truly dies. Every species that has ever been devoured lives on, reborn in a new shape, stripped of individuality but preserved in essence. The hive mind is the galaxy's memory made flesh. It has eaten the past and now dreams of the future, a future where everything is one, not united by peace or purpose, but by digestion. A singular organism spanning all of existence, every atom and every soul part of one unending metabolism. In the dark between systems, the swarm waits. The shadow in the warp stretches outward, a psychic fog probing for new stars to consume. Its tendrils brush against distant planets, tasting atmospheres, weighing potential. It feels gravity wells like a shark feels blood in the water. Somewhere, Far away, another system flinches as the shadow touches it. The psychers of that world wake screaming, their dreams filled with chittering voices and the smell of wet soil. They do not know it yet, but they have already been chosen. For the Imperium, knowledge of the Tyranids is despair. Every world fortified, every weapon built, every prayer whispered, all are just time bought from the inevitable. The hive mind does not conquer through strategy, but through inevitability. No matter how many worlds are saved, there will always be another swarm, another tendril, another hunger rising from the dark. The galaxy is vast, but hunger is patient, and patience is victory. Some inquisitors have tried to quantify it, to find a limit, a scale, an edge to the swarm's domain. They have failed. The hive mind is not a single entity but a network of will and biology stretching across millions of light years. For every fleet destroyed, another is already on its way. For every tendril severed, two more branch off. It cannot die because it does not live as mortals do. It exists because it must. The universe created life, and life created hunger. The Tyranids are simply the end of that equation. There are theories whispered among the more heretical of the Ordo Xenos, that the Tyranids came not from within our galaxy, but from beyond. That somewhere in the endless void outside the Milky Way lies another galaxy already consumed, its stars long since extinguished, its mass carried here as memory. If this is true, then what we face is not the beginning of their invasion. It is the continuation of an infinite cycle. To them, our galaxy is just another course in an eternal feast. Imagine it. 1,000,000 galaxies before ours, each swallowed whole, each leaving behind nothing but darkness and faint whispers of life that once was. The hive mind carries those memories with it, silent and vast, its collective consciousness swollen with the residue of extinct civilizations. Perhaps it remembers them the way a predator remembers the taste of its first kill. Not with affection, but with instinct. In this light, the Tyranids are not monsters. They are inevitability made real. On one distant hive ship, deep within the gelatinous labyrinths of its core, a new creature opens its eyes. It is unlike the others, leaner, sharper, its neural patterns more intricate. The hive mind has designed it with purpose. Its first breath is thick with chemical scent, the residue of worlds already consumed. It blinks, and in that instant, the memories of thousands of species flood its consciousness. Not as emotions, but as data. It knows how they fought, how they died, how they tasted. It knows the meaning of survival. It knows the next course is near. The creature looks outward through the bioflesh of the hive ship's hull. Stars drift across the void, distant, trembling. One of them pulses with blue light. Around it senses gravity, warmth, life. Its claws flex involuntarily. It hungers. The hive mind hears its thought and responds. The fleet stirs. The tendrils extend once more, the shadow swelling across the stars like a great tide of darkness. The new world's fate is sealed long before its inhabitants even look up and wonder why their dreams have turned to nightmares. In that moment, somewhere deep within the swarm, thought becomes desire, and desire becomes command. The hive mind whispers across the void, and billions of creatures move as one. It does not roar or shout. Its voice is calm, endless, assured. The voice of gravity, of decay, of inevitability. It speaks a single truth. We are the end of hunger because we are hunger. The swarm accelerates, a living constellation of doom. Stars glimmer faintly behind it, their light dimmed by the thick psychic shadow that trails in its wake. On 1,000 worlds, priests pray for salvation. Admirals prepare fleets, planets strengthen their shields. But the hive mind feels none of it. Their defiance is as brief and meaningless as sparks before the firestorm. There is no malice in what comes, only purpose. Every motion, every feeding, every breath of the swarm serves the same equation. Life becomes fuel, fuel becomes flesh, flesh becomes swarm. The universe itself is its pantry. And one day, when every world is gone, when the stars themselves are cold and hollow, the hive mind will turn inward. It will feed upon itself, collapsing into a single perfect organism, silent, complete, eternal. Then, in that final moment before entropy, perhaps it will look upon what it has done and feel something almost human. Not guilt, not joy, satisfaction. Because it will know that it has fulfilled the only law that ever mattered, to eat and to endure. The void will be quiet again. No light, no sound, no hunger, just silence. The first and last peace the galaxy will ever know. But that time is not yet. For now, The Hive fleet drifts toward the next sun, the next world, the next heartbeat waiting to be devoured. The stars tremble. The warp howls, the shadow deepens, and the endless hunger continues.